Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. And if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. In today's tutorial, we're making an asymmetrical cable stitch mock neck top. Besides being a mouthful to say, this modern vest is also a feast for the eyes with all of its cable, ribbing, and mock neck goodness. Speaking of, if you're in the mood for more mock neck goodness, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of the best modern crochet tutorials and patterns, including mock necks and turtlenecks, with more dropping weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support, so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 220 grams of yarn, and that's 500 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us what you're currently watching. I actually just started watching Only Murders in the Building, and so far I'm loving it. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 6 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, treble crochet, and double treble crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5mm hook, and no matter what size we're making, we're all going to start with a chain 8 because we're getting started with our cable stitch section first. Now that we all have our chain 8, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 does not count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then from here, we're all going to yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet. Then into that chain that we blocked off with the 3rd chain from our hook, we're going to insert with our first half double crochet. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, then yarn over, pull through all 3. Once more, yarn over, into that next chain, pull through all 3. Continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. We all have our row number 1 complete. We should all have a total of 8 stitches. Now everyone's row 2 is going to be a single crochet row. Chain 1, flip our work, that chain 1 is our turning chain, and insert with 1 single crochet into every stitch. Doing the next one, insert your hook into that following stitch, pull through 2. Continue with 1 single crochet into every stitch. Everyone's row 2 is complete. Now let's get started on our row 3, or our first cable stitch row. Chain 2 and flip. Our cable stitch detail is always going to start with a front post treble crochet, and we're going to call that our outside stitch. So we're all going to yarn over twice. That's how we prepare for our front post treble. Now since we're working on our cable stitch row, every cable stitch row is going to be worked into our previous odd number row. Since we're working on row 3, we're going to be inserting our hook underneath the bodies of our row 1. So finding the first half double crochet from our row 1, making sure we are not counting that chain 2, we're going to insert our hook underneath the body of that first half double and through the other side. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through. Then from here, we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now that is our first front post treble crochet completed. Now to get started on the actual cable stitch detail, we're going to start with a front post double treble crochet. So yarn over 3 times. Taking a look at our row 1, we're all going to skip the following 2 stitches. So there's 1, there's 2. We're going to insert our hook underneath the following and the one right after that with a front post double treble. So bring your hook down, like I said, skip 1, skip 2, underneath that following stitch and through the other side, pull through. From here, yarn over, pull through 2 till there's 1 loop left on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Another front post double treble crochet underneath the following stitch, so yarn over 1, 2, 3 times. Into that following stitch, bring your hook underneath, through the other side, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Then a set of 2 front post double treble crochets worked into those 2 skipped stitches. So yarn over 3 times. Into that first skip stitch, the one nearest to our outside stitch, insert your hook underneath the body, through the other side and pull through. And again, yarn over and pull through 2 until we all have 1 loop left on our hook. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Then another front post double treble crochet into our next skipped stitch. So yarn over 3 times again. Into that following skip stitch, insert your hook underneath the body of that stitch, through the other side, and pull through. Then yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through 2. Then into the following 2 stitches from our row 1, 1 front post treble crochet into each of those. So yarn over twice. Finding that following stitch, which should be the 3rd to last stitch from our row 1, we're going to insert our hook underneath, through the other side, then yarn over, pull through 2 until we all have 1 loop left on our hook. There's 1 front post treble, another front post treble into that following stitch or into the 2nd to last stitch from our row 1, so yarn over twice. Underneath that stitch through the other side, pull through 2, 2, and 2. Now the last stitch for every cable stitch row is going to be another front post treble crochet, so just like our outside stitch, but it's going to be combined with a half double crochet to secure it down. So what we're going to do is yarn over twice, that is per usual. Underneath that following stitch from our row 1 should be the last stitch. We're going to insert a hook underneath, pull through. Then from here we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 until we have 2 loops left on our hook. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. When we have those 2 loops on our hook, we are going to yarn over and insert your hook into the last stitch from our previous row. So bring your hook down into that last stitch, yarn over, pull through. We should all have 4 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through all 4 of those loops. Now our row 3 is complete. Now every even number row is going to be a single crochet row. So from here, chain 1, flip your work, put 1 single crochet into every stitch. And as a quick tip for this cable stitch detail, every row should have a total of 8 stitches. Alright, everyone's row 1, 2, 3, 4 rows are completed. Let's get started on a row 5, so chain 2 and flip your work. So getting started on a row 5 or any cable stitch row, it's always going to start with our outside stitch, which is always a front post treble crochet, so yarn over twice. Underneath the first stitch from our row 3, because remember every cable stitch row is worked into the previous odd number row or the previous cable stitch row, we're going to find that stitch, bring your hook through the other side, pull through, then yarn over and pull through 2 until we all have 1 loop left on our hook. That is our outside stitch. Now getting started on the cable stitch detail, we're going to start with 1 front post treble crochet into each of the following 2 stitches. So here's my following stitch and the one right after that, 1 front post treble crochet into each. So yarn over twice. Underneath that following stitch, through the other side, pull through, then yarn over and pull through 2 until we all have 1 loop left on our hook, and then 1 more into that following stitch. So yarn over twice. Underneath, through the other side, pull through, then yarn over and pull through 2 until we all have 1 loop left on our hook. Then from here, we're going to skip the following 2 stitches and then 1 front post double treble crochet into the following 2 stitches. So we're all going to start with a yarn over of 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip 1, skip 2. Into that following stitch or the 3rd to last stitch from our row 3, bring our hook underneath and through the other side. Then yarn over, pull through. Yarn over and pull through 2 until we all have 1 loop left on our hook. Then another front post double treble crochet into the following or into the second to last stitch from our row 3. So yarn over 3 times. Into that following stitch, insert, pull through, then yarn over and pull through 2 until we all have 1 loop left on our hook. Then from here, we're all going to be working into those skip stitches, but now working into that window that we just made for ourselves. So it's going to be 1 front post double treble crochet into each, so yarn over 3 times. From here, we're all going to hang on to our working yarn because it can very easily fall off. Then we're going to pull our hook down towards us, finding those 2 skip stitches in through that window. So we're going to pull our work down and find those skip stitches, and these are mine. Here's 1, here's 2. I'm going to insert my hook underneath the first one, through the other side, pull through, then per usual, yarn over and pull through 2 until we all have 1 loop left on our hook. There's my first stitch. We have 1 more left to do. So again, yarn over 1, 2, 3 times. Hang on to your working yarn and pull our work down towards us. Finding that last skip stitch, bring your hook down underneath that stitch through the other side and pull through. Then again, yarn over, pull through 2 until we all have 1 loop left on our hook. And that is the twist for our row 5. Now everyone's last stitch for every cable stitch row is going to be a front post treble combined with a half double. So it will be done the same way that we did our previous cable stitch row. So just to get that started, yarn over twice. Bring your hook underneath the last stitch from our row 3 through the other side, yarn over and pull through. From here, we're all going to yarn over and pull through 2 until we all have 2 loops left on our hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. When we have those 2 loops, yarn over. Insert your hook into the last stitch from our previous row, through the other side, pull through. When we have those 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all 4, and now our row 5 is complete. Like I said, every even number row is a single crochet row, so chain 1, flip your work, and 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then I'll meet you back. We are back. We have just completed rows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 all together. Now it's going to be a repeat of rows 3 through 6, so let's just get started on the following row together. So chain 2 and flip. Now getting started on our row 7, it is going to be a repeat of our row 3. So to get that started, every cable stitch row is going to start with a front post treble crochet, so yarn over twice. Finding that first stitch from our previous cable stitch row, we're all going to bring our hook down, underneath that first stitch, through the other side, pull through, and continue to pull through 2 until we all have 1 loop left on our hook. Then from here, to get started on our actual cable stitch detail, we're all going to yarn over 3 times, preparing for a front post double treble crochet. We're going to skip 1, skip 2. Into that following stitch, insert with our first front post double treble crochet, and then another front post double treble crochet into that following stitch. And the rest of this row is going to be an exact repeat of our row 3. Now if you need timestamps for any of these rows, they will be linked in the description. But all we're going to do from here is continue to repeat rows 3 through 6 until you all get the height of the chest portion that we need. So placing the first row where we'd like the bottom of this top to be, so you can make this cropped or full length, mine will be full length, and continuing on with our cable stitch rows until this reaches roughly mid-chest or mid-sternum, whatever you want to call it. But I'll meet you guys back right after a cable stitch row, and then we can get started on the rest. Alright, so we are back with our cable stitch detail. I have a total of 45 rows, and my length is roughly 13.5 inches or 35 centimeters. Now from here, we're all going to do a slant row. So from where we're at, we're all going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now since we should all have a total of 8 stitches, what we are all going to do is 2 single crochets, 2 half doubles, and then 4 double crochets so that we can get started on the shoulder strap side of our piece. So we're going to start with 2 single crochets. So there's 1 into the following stitch with a second single crochet. Then 1 half double crochet into the following 2 stitches. There's 1, there's 2, and then 1 double crochet into the rest of our stitches, which is 4 double crochets in total. So there's 1, There is 2. There is 3. And 4. And now our slant row is complete. Now what we're going to do from here is do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then we can get started on our side panel. So making sure that our cable stitch is faced up towards us, we are going to make sure that we're inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of the taller side, so the side that our tail end is on. Then we're going to start with a single crochet row, and we're going to start with 2 single crochets into the first side row. So go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook. We are going to pull through and start with a chain 1 that doesn't count as a stitch, that's just as secure. Now we are going to be putting 2 single crochets into every side cable stitch row, 1 single crochet into every side single crochet row, and then once we make our way all the way up to the top, 2 single crochets into the side of that double crochet. So getting this started, we're going to find the top loop for our first cable stitch row. This is mine right here. I'm going to find that and insert my hook in through there with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and then there's 2 into that same side row. Now everyone's following side row should be a single crochet, and if it's a little bit hard to pull it apart, you can flip your work over and see that that's our single crochet and just follow that top loop. This is mine right here, and insert with 1 single crochet. Let's do another set of rows together. This is my following side cable stitch row. So I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2 singles. There's 1, there is 2, and then our following side single crochet row, just 1 single crochet is worked into there. Continue doing this, making our way all the way up. And don't forget to put 2 single crochets into the side of that double crochet, and then I'll meet you guys back. Alright, so we are back. We have made our way all the way up with our single crochet row. Now our following row is going to be a back loop slip stitch row. From where we're at, let's all chain 1 and flip our work. Our back loop slip stitch rows for this portion aren't going to have any increases or decreases. So all we're going to do is find that first stitch from our previous row and insert into that back loop. When we have those 2 loops on our hook, just yarn over, pull through both of those loops. Again, into that next stitch's back loop, insert, yarn over, and gently pull through both loops. And that's it. Continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And we do want to make sure to not tug too tightly after every stitch, otherwise a following row could be too tight to work into. Alrighty, so our back loop slip stitch row is complete. Now we're going to get started on the following row in a row sequence, which is going to be a back loop half double crochet row. So we're going to chain 2 and flip your work. All we're going to do is put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one. So yarn over. Find the last stitch from our previous row and insert only into that back loop. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Again, yarn over into that following stitch's back loop, insert, pull through, and pull through all 3. Continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one so we can increase together. We've put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving that last one. Now into that last one, we're all going to do an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets. So insert with 1, and then insert with a second back loop half double crochet, and that's it. Now we're going to do a back loop slip stitch row, because that's the next row in our row sequence, which is just a back loop slip and back loop half double crochet row. So we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now for this portion, our back loop slip stitch rows aren't going to have any increases or decreases, so just put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one, and I'll meet you back so we can increase together once more. Alright, so we are back. We have finished up our back loop slip stitch row and made our way back up with our back loop half double crochet row, leaving that last stitch, and now we're going to close it off with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles. So yarn over, insert your hook into that last stitch's back loop with 1 back loop half double, and then with a second back loop half double, and that's it. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until this portion that we have can reach over from mid-chest, because our cable stitch is going to be at mid-chest, over to the side of the base of our neck. Now we want to make sure that we're not stretching it over too far, because this does still need to connect to the mock neck that we're going to be doing later. So I'll meet you guys back right after a half double crochet row or along the top, so we can get started on the shoulder right after that. Alrighty, so we are back and my side panel is complete. I have a total of 9 rows and my width is roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters unstretched, or my total width is roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters unstretched. Now what we're going to do from here, since we all should have ended along the top, is make a chain that reaches the top of our shoulder, making sure that we're placing this top row that we have right here where we would like for it to lay when it's finished. So you can make this as high or as low as you like. Now I have already made my chain, as you guys can see. I needed roughly 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters, so I made a chain 20, and now we're going to do the following row in a row sequence, which is a slip stitch row. So we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 does not count as a stitch, that's our turning chain, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert, pull through everything on our hook. From here, continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. Once we reach the body, 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then from here, all we're going to do is a back loop slip stitch and back loop half double crochet row with no increases and no decreases, since this is the shoulder portion. So at the end of this slip stitch row, we're all going to chain 2 and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, working our way back up. Then just alternate between a back loop half double and back loop slip stitch row until we have a portion that can stretch over to the corner of our underarm. And I'll meet you back right after a back loop slip stitch row so that we can get started on our underarm from there. Alrighty, we are back. We have just finished up our shoulder portion. I now have a total of 14 rows. My width is now 3 inches or 8 centimeters unstretched, or my total width is 5 inches or 13 centimeters, also unstretched. What we're all going to do from here is first start by inserting our stitch marker into the stitch that we have that's nearest to the corner of our underarm. Then from here, since we all should have ended along the bottom, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3 stitches before our stitch marker stitch. So we've made our way down with our back loop half double crochet row, leaving the last 3 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now we're all going to do a decrease of 3 back loop half doubles. So we're all going to start with a yarn over. Into that third to last back loop, we're going to insert, pull through. Into that second to last, pull through, and then into that last stitch that's right before our stitch marker, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through all 5. Then we're going to do our back loop slip stitch row, and that is not going to have any increases or decreases, so chain 1 and flip. Then from here, put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3 so we can do our decrease together once more. We've finished up our back loop slip stitch row and then made our way back up with our back loop half double crochet row, leaving the last 3 stitches. Now we're going to do our decrease together once more. So yarn over, insert your hook into that third to last back loop, pull through, second to last, pull through, last, and pull through for 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through all 5. Then from here, it's going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows until we have a portion that can now stretch over to mid underarm. And right after that, do a chain up 1 and cut right after a back loop half double crochet row, and then we can get started on the other side. I am back. My underarm portion is complete. I now have a total of 21 rows. My width is roughly 5 inches or 13 centimeters, or now my total width is 7 inches or 18 centimeters. I did do a chain up 1 and cut right after this last row, and now all we're going to do is the other side of our front panel, but this side's going to be pretty simple. So all we're going to do is make sure that our work is flipped right side up, meaning the cable stitch details faced up towards us. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of the cable stitch detail. Then all we're going to do is our first single crochet row, so basically the same first single crochet row that we did on the other side. We're going to start by inserting our yarn onto our hook. We are going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure, and we are still going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side single crochet row and 2 single crochets into every side cable stitch row, and this is going to start with 1 single crochet because we are at the edge of this row and it starts with a single crochet. So find that top loop and insert with just 1 single crochet. Then everyone's following side row should be a side cable stitch row. You can kind of separate your piece like this to make it a little bit easier to see, but find that top loop and insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1 and then there's 2. And that's it. All we're going to do is continue with 1 single crochet into every side single crochet row, 2 single crochets into every side cable stitch row, and make our way all the way down. Then all we're going to do from there is a back loop slip stitch row and back loop half double crochet rows with absolutely no increases and no decreases until this portion can reach mid underarm on the other side. So this portion isn't going to have any increases or decreases. I'll meet you guys back right after we have that width all finished up, right after a back loop half double crochet row. Alright, so we are back. We have finished up the entirety of our front panel now. Now on this side, the part where we didn't do any increases or decreases, I have a total of 21 rows, and now my total width is 11.5 inches or 29 centimeters unstretched. Now from here, we're just going to continue on with the back panel. So what we're going to do is our seam. So since we all should have ended right after a half double crochet row, and we should all be along the bottom, what we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, making our way all the way back up, and then I'll meet you back. We are back, and our side seam is all finished up. Now I do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into any part of this slip stitch row just so we know where the seam is. And now what we're going to do from here is start on the back panel, but it's going to start in reverse. So what we're going to do is do our back loop half double and back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases. So basically the same way that we did this portion right over here on this side of our cable stitch detail for the same amount of rows. Now I do want to make sure that we're not counting our side seam. So for me, I had a total of 21 rows. So getting started on my back panel, I will be doing an additional 21 rows. We're all going to end on a half double crochet row, and then I'll meet you guys back. Alright, so we are back. We have just finished up the first half of our back panel. Now my total width is roughly 17 inches or 43 centimeters unstretched. Now we're going to get started on our middle rows. Now the middle rows are going to be the same for everyone. So we are all going to do 5 middle rows, and they're all going to be just back loop half double and back loop slip stitch rows with absolutely no increases and no decreases. So since we all should have ended right after a back loop half double crochet row, all we're going to do is 1 slip stitch row, a half double crochet row, another slip stitch row, another half double crochet row, and then we're all going to end on a slip stitch row. And then I'll meet you guys back so we can get started on the slant that curves up to our shoulder. Alrighty, so we are back. I have just finished up my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 middle rows. Now what we're going to do from here is the same increase portion that we did for the front panel, but since we started off this side by inserting our hook into a different piece, our increases are now going to be along the top so it can match the increases on the other side. So after our last middle row, we all should have finished up along the top right after a slip stitch row. What we're going to do from here is chain 2, flip our work, and then start off this half double crochet row with an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets. So there's 1, and then into that same back loop with a second back loop half double crochet. Then from here, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Then our following row is going to be a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. And all we're going to do is continue to repeat these 2 rows. So like I said, a back loop half double crochet row that starts with an increase of 2, and then a back loop slip stitch row without any increases or decreases for the same amount of increase rows as the front panel. So counting mine out together, my first row is a single crochet row. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. I will meet you back when I have a total of 9 increase rows all finished up, and then we can get started on the shoulder. Alrighty, so we are back. We have just finished up our increase portion for our back panel. Now we're going to get started on the shoulder portion. So we all should have ended along the bottom. What we're going to do is just take our hook out of the bottom corner stitch. We don't need to do a chain of 1 cut unless you want to weave in those tail ends. That's completely up to you. But I'm just going to take out my hook, insert my hook into the top corner stitch of my back panel, and we're going to start by making a chain for the same amount of chains that we made that led up to the shoulder for the front panel. Now for those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain 20. So over here I inserted the other end of my yarn onto my hook, made a chain 20, and then did a chain up of 1 and cut. Now what we're all going to do from here is the same amount of shoulder rows as the front panel. So go ahead and reinsert your hook into the bottom corner stitch, which is where our working yarn is, and make your way up with back loop slip stitches into every stitch. Once you reach the chain, 1 slip stitch into every chain, and then from there 1 back loop half double crochet row, and then another back loop slip stitch row with absolutely no increases and no decreases into either row. We're going to continue to repeat those 2 rows for the same amount of rows that we had for the front panel's shoulder portion. And as a really quick tip, we should all have the same amount of stitches as our front panel shoulder portion as well. Everyone's last row is going to end along the top right after our back loop slip stitch row. Once when it does, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you guys back so we can finish up with our underarm. Alright, so we are back. Our shoulder portion is complete. My total width is now 22 inches or 56 centimeters, and now we're going to get started on our underarm. So we all should have ended along the top. So I did do a chain up of 1 and cut, and now we're going to insert our stitch marker into the same stitch that we inserted it into for this shoulder portion over here. So for those of you that have my numbers, I inserted my stitch marker into the 25th stitch from the top, so I did the same thing on this side. Now to keep up with the ribbing, we're all going to be inserting our hook into the stitch that's nearest to our stitch marker, that's working down towards the bottom, into that back loop. So this is my stitch marker, working down towards the bottom. Insert your hook into that following stitch, only into that back loop though, and then we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook. We're going to pull through and start with a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, we just need the height, and we're going to start with a decrease of 3 back loop half double crochets. So yarn over. Into that same stitch that our chain 2 is in, we're going to insert, pull through, into that next stitch's back loop, pull through, into the stitch's back loop from there, pull through for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 5. Then from here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, we're going to continue on with this repeat. So at the end of the row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, put 1 back loop, slip stitch into every stitch, and we aren't going to do any increases or decreases into those because we didn't do any increases or decreases into the other underarm. Then at the end of our back loop slip stitch row, chain 2, flip our work, start our row off with a decrease of 3 back loop half doubles, same way that we started off this row, then 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. Continue to repeat those 2 rows until we have the same amount of rows as our other underarm portion, and once we do, I'll meet you back to seam it up. And just as a really quick tip, everyone's last underarm row should have the same amount of stitches as our last underarm row that we did for the front panel. Alright, so we are back. My back panel is completely finished. Now I have a total of 22 inches or 58 centimeters, and now we're going to seam the sides. So this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so we're all going to start by folding our work in half, making sure that the cable stitch detail is on the outside. Then from here, we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of the front and the back panel. Then we are going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now to do our first stitch, we're all going to start by finding that first stitch into the front panel and insert only into that front loop. Then into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. When we have those 3 loops on our hook, just yarn over and pull through all 3. Let's do this again. Into that next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, pull through everything, and that's it. Continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Okie dokie. Now that our sides are all seamed up, the next one we're going to seam is our shoulder strap. So first things first, we're now going to flip our work wrong side out, meaning the cable is now along the inside, and then we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of our shoulder strap. Then from here, we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. And all we're going to do is put 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row and 2 single crochet into every side half double crochet row, working into both the front and back panel at the same time. So everyone's first side row should be a side slip stitch row. So we're going to find that top loop and insert our hook in through there within the front panel. Find our following side slip stitch row within the back panel, insert your hook in through that top loop, and single crochet. Let's do the next one. Everyone's next side row should be a side half double crochet row. So we're going to find that top loop and insert there within the front panel. Find the next side half double crochet row within the back panel and insert into that top loop. And we're going to do another single crochet. And since this is a side half double crochet row, we are going to need to put another single crochet into the same side row. So insert into the front panel and in the back. It should be a little bit easier since everything is already gathered. And then single crochet. And that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more side rows left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, so now that everything is all seamed up, we're ready to get started on the single crochet row along the top of our piece to clean it up and to prep for our other strap. So all we're going to do is start by inserting our hook into the stitch that we have into the shoulder band that's nearest to our first row right over here. So I'm just going to insert my hook in through that next available stitch, and all we're going to do from here is 2 single crochets into every side half double, 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row. Once we reach on top of our cable stitch detail, 1 single crochet on top of each of those stitches, and we're going to continue that until we reach our seam along the side, and then I'll meet you guys back on the side. So we made our way down with our single crochet row, and we are now at our side seam, the one that has our stitch marker into it. And what we're going to do from here is put 1 single crochet into the top of that side slip stitch row, and then insert your stitch marker into that stitch so we know where the middle is on the side. So just into that top stitch, and then from here we're just going to continue with 2 single crochets into every side half double, 1 single crochet into every side slip, making our way all the way up to our shoulder. Once we do, slip stitch into that following stitch into the shoulder strap that we have, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. We are back, and we have just finished up our single crochet row, making our way all the way around the top of our piece. Now from here, we're all going to insert our stitch marker into the stitch that we want our strap to be. Now this is completely up to you, but you do want to make sure that once you try this on and you're figuring out where to insert your stitch markers, that it is nearest to the side of your neck, because remember that this is going to be the base for the other side of our mock neck. So for those of you that have my numbers, from my side seam where we insert our stitch marker into our single crochet row, not counting that stitch marker stitch, I counted in 18 stitches and inserted it into the front panel, and then did the same thing along the back panel. We do want to make sure that it's within the same stitch within the front and the back panel so that everything is even. Then what we're going to do from here is figure out how many chains we're going to need to make for this side of our strap. Now the easiest way that I have figured out to make my chain to make sure that it's even on both sides is take the amount of chains that we made on this side that led all the way up to the top of our shoulder, plus 1 additional chain for every odd number row that we had for this increased portion that we had right over here. So all I'm going to do is take my amount of chains, which is 20 for me. Then counting down towards my cable stitch detail, here's 20 plus 1, because that's my first half double crochet row, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, we are also going to count that single crochet row as well. So I'm going to make a chain of 25 on this side. So making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, meaning the cable stitch detail is faced up towards us. I'm going to insert my hook into my stitch marker stitch. Now that we have our chain, we are going to want to insert our stitch marker into the last chain, because this is the last chain that we're going to have for the front panel. And then working our way back down, I'm going to chain another 25, so the same amount of chains that we just made. But into my following chain, I am going to insert my stitch marker into there as well, because these 2 chains are my 2 middle chains for this strap. I'm going to continue on with the rest of my chain, and then I'll meet you back along the back so I can show you how we're going to connect it. Alright, so we have our chain, and now we're going to slip stitch it into that stitch marker stitch that we have within the back panel. So insert your hook into that stitch, yarn over, and pull through everything on our hook. And now our chain is connected. Then we're going to be doing 1 more single crochet row just to sturdy everything up. So the direction that we're going to be slip stitching into is in the direction of our side seam, not the shoulder seam. So just following into that next stitch, we're going to slip stitch into there. None of those slip stitches into the base actually count as a stitch, and we're going to flip our work and make your way all the way up and over with 1 single crochet into every chain, making sure to insert your stitch markers into those stitches once when we get there. And we're doing it this way to make sure that the front of our single crochet row is showing. Our single crochet row for our strap is completed, and now we're going to slip stitch it into the base. So just making sure that our strap isn't twisted, we're going to slip stitch into that next available stitch, and it should be that stitch that's nearest to our side seam. We're just going to find that next available stitch, insert it in through there with a slip stitch, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, so our strap is completed. Now we're all going to do the prep row for our mock neck. So we're all going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're all going to start by inserting our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our shoulder seam within the front panel. Insert your hook. Then we're going to make a chain for the front of our neckline, attach it into the strap, and then make the same chain on the outside. So I have already measured mine out, so I need a chain of 33. That's roughly 8 inches or 20 centimeters. I'm going to insert my yarn onto my hook, and then from here start with my chain 33. Now that we have our chain, we're going to connect it into our strap. So all we're going to do is first of all make sure that our strap isn't twisted. Then we're going to insert our hook into our first stitch marker stitch that we have into our single crochet strap. So I'm going to insert into there with a single crochet. This is to connect it. And then single crochet into that following stitch marker stitch as well. So insert into there just for a little bit of extra security. And once we have our 2 single crochets into our single crochet strap, then make the same chain that we made on this side. So another 33 for me. And now that we have this chain, we are going to slip stitch it into that next available stitch that we have that's nearest to our shoulder seam, but into the back panel. So this is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook in through there with a slip stitch, and then just slip stitch it into that first chain that we made as well to connect everything. And now this row is complete. We're going to do one more single crochet row just to sturdy everything up. So from here, just chain 1, and then 1 single crochet into every chain, making our way all the way around. Slip stitch into that chain space, and then I'll meet you back. And once when the single crochet row is completed, try our piece on just to make sure that this can still fit around our head. This single crochet row is going to be as wide as this piece can stretch. So if you try it on and if it's a little bit too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip. So now that our single crochet row is complete, we're now going to make a chain the height that we'd like for our mock neck to be. Now you can make this as long or as short as you'd like. I'd like for mine to be a little bit on the shorter side, just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 8. Now that we have our chain, we are going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1, and then slip stitch all the way back down. So into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with our first slip stitch, and then put 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now that we've put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're now going to connect it into the base. So all we're going to do is start by finding that next available stitch into the base and insert with a slip stitch. And that slip stitch does not count as a stitch, we just needed to connect it. Now to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base as well. Also does not actually count as a stitch. Flip our work and now put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So just finding that last stitch from our previous row, not into those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert into that back loop and gently pull through everything and continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now at the end of this row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, and I'll meet you back at the base just once more. We are back and we should all have 1, 2, 3 rows completed, and now we're just going to connect it into the base the same we did our previous row. So find that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch to close off this odd number row. Then in order to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows with no increases and no decreases, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back to seam everything together. So we are back. We have made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam everything together. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and then we're going to be inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, and this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so the same seam that we did for the sides. All we're going to do is yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. Then start by finding that first stitch into the front panel and insert only into that front loop. Then find that next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop, then yarn over and pull through everything, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So now that our mock neck is all seamed up, the next thing we're going to do is just clean up our armhole and then we'll be all done. So let's make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our underarm, that's into the shoulder band. Then we're just going to put 2 single crochets into every side half double, 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row until we're worked into all of our side rows, and then once we're worked into our last side row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the shoulder band, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, so we're back. We have just finished up single crocheting along our armhole and we are all done. The last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope y'all enjoy the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye!